Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue, and as most of you know, I'm the black powder editor for Guns of the Old West magazine. And today I'm out here with a beautiful Spiller Burr replica revolver. Now, this gun is made by Pietta in Italy, and it's imported by Dixie Gun Works in Union City, Tennessee. And today you're going to see me doing a range test on it for Guns of the Old West magazine, because this is the first time in 2 months I've been able to get out to the range because of all the snow and ice storms that we've been having here in the East Coast this year. So I need to get this done for some magazine work, and I thought maybe you'd like to see it. And now later on, another day, we'll take it out and we'll put it through a fun test with Evil Roy and maybe some shaving cream cans and water bottles and just have a little bit of fun plinking around with it. But for today, it's going to be accuracy and velocity. The Spiller & Burr revolver is the result of a collaboration between two wealthy Virginians, Edward Spiller and David Burr, who joined up with a small arms expert, Colonel James H. Burton, to produce this revolver for the South, because the South was in real trouble in terms of armaments, because the Northern blockade was stopping European shipments from getting through, and Northern gun makers, of course, couldn't supply the South. So the South was running out of material. They were running out of pistols. And they contracted with Spiller & Burr to make 15,000 pistols that would be a copy of Colt's single-action 1851 Navy revolver, which was the standard sidearm and standard caliber of the Confederacy. But James Burton had a better idea. He thought there was a better gun than the Colt Navy, and he decided to copy the Whitney revolver. And that's a solid frame revolver, as you see here, and this gun had some definite advantages over the Colt, and we'll try to show you some of those later. But they had a lot of problems producing it. They couldn't get the materials they needed, and they also couldn't get a trained labor force to make it because so many of the men were in the Army fighting. And as a result, instead of 15,000 guns, they ultimately made less than 1,500, making original Spiller & Burrs very collectible today. Well, to load the Spiller & Burr revolver, it's the same procedure you've seen in most of my videos using cap and ball. I'm going to load from the flask, and this is a 36 caliber revolver. This flask will throw 18 grains of 3F GO-X powder. I'm using these cast 380 round balls. So this is a full 38. It's a little bit oversized, but I think it'll seal them up good. And I'm going to use these lubed felt wads. So the procedure is pretty simple. We put it on half cock so the cylinder will spin. I'm going to dump a load from the flask into one chamber and get that in. Then I will top that with a wad, and as you've seen before, I like to use this base of a pen just to get the wad seated a little bit evenly, and we'll then top that off with one of the 3.38 diameter round balls and run it under the rammer, and we'll just send it home. And I'm going to do that 5 times. In the 19th century, they would have rested the hammer between these slots, the hammer nose, but actually this hammer is too thick to fit in there, which is a problem with a lot of replicas. So if you want to, you can file that a little bit smaller. File this a little bit smaller so it fits in these notches, and then you could load 6 safely, but generally I load 5 anyway. So I'm going to load another 4 of these, and then we'll cap it up. One nice thing about the Spiller & Burr that's different from the Remington, even though they copied a lot of Remington features, is that the frame is flush with the cylinder, which means When you load a ball in, you can't over-rotate it past where it needs to be for the rammer, because the other side of the frame here just stops it cold. And that's actually kind of handy. Well, Evil Roy's nephew, Paper Pete, is downrange and he's following in his uncle's evil footsteps. So let's see what we can do with the Spiller and Burr revolver to slow down his life of crime. As you can see, we're getting a pretty good group off of this thing. Now, I have been aiming about 6 inches below Paper Pete's crotch. And I'm hitting about 18 inches high, I would say, on the target. So this thing really calls for a little Kentucky elevation if you're going to use it to defend yourself. The Spiller and Burr is a Confederate copy of the Whitney revolver, as I've already told you. And as such, it shares a number of design features with the Remington New Model Army. And just a glance at them will show you that. The hammers are virtually the same except for size. Ditto the grips, the cylinder. There's a lot, there are a lot of similarities between the Whitney and the Spiller and Burr and the Remington. As is the case with a lot of the guns of the Confederacy, the Spiller and Burr has a brass frame. And that's because iron and steel were so difficult to come by because of the lack of industry in the South and because of the North's blockades of the South's ports, that the gun makers had to resort to brass and bronze to make their frames. The cylinder on original Spiller and Burrs was made out of iron. Whereas on the Whitney it was made out of steel. So they had to use what they had available. Well, let's put the Spiller and Burr over the chronograph. Since it's shooting about 18 inches high, this is going to be quite a challenge not to shoot my screens or aim too low and shoot the chronograph itself. So keep your fingers crossed for me. Made it. Now I just got to do that 4 more times. I should have kept count. Well, the Spiller and Burr here, just like the Whitney revolver it's based on, shares a lot of traits in common with the Remington. But one thing it does not share in common with the Remington is takedown. Because, of course, for the Remington, we drop this loading lever and you pull the base pin, right? And then the cylinder pops out. And we can't do that with the Spiller and Burr or with the Whitney, because this right here, this whole base pin loading lever thing, that is the patent of 1858 that so many people think this gun is named after, which of course it is not. This is the New Model Army of 1863. But Beals, who worked for Remington, patented this in 1858, and of course Whitney could not copy it. So on the Spiller and Burr Whitney clone, we have a whole different method of getting the cylinder out. We still put it on half cock, and then there's a screw, and you can see that that screw kind of has a stud on the other side, and I'm going to turn that, and this is something you kind of have to feel it into place. What you want is for this stud to be basically horizontal instead of vertical, and then you open up the channel and you can pull the base pin right out, and then you just flip the cylinder out just like you would on a Remington. And if we can get if I can get a little light shining in here, I'll show you. We can get, alright, so if I can get on there, you'll see that that this stud, when I rotate it so that it's up and down, I'm going to try to get this on the camera, it puts a little detent that holds a base pin in. And when this is rotated so that it's horizontal, that detent's gone. And that engages the base pin assembly right here. So if you can see that, then I gotta apologize because I'm kind of looking at this upside down. If you can see that little slot, that's what that detent grabs a hold of. So if you want to get inside, just like with a Remington, you remove this screw and we'll be in, but I don't have to. So now I'm going to clean it, and as most of you guys know, I've been a ballistol guy for 20 years. This is ballistol and water. It's what I usually use to clean black powder firearms. But recently, I started using this product called RAND CLP. And this is a Nano infused cleaner, lubricant, and protectorant. And I know that because it says it right here. But basically, it's a vegetable oil base, so it's non-petroleum. And it has like 3 micron size particles in it. That they're polymer. But what they do is they get into the pores of the metal. And it really protects the metal, and it keeps it well lubricated. When I was at the range, I fired about 50 rounds through this. And I had previously stripped it of its factory lubrication and re-lubed it with the RAND CLP. And it never bound up. Not at all. Which for, design that's derived basically off of the Remington design, or vice versa, that's phenomenal. It just kept on spinning. So I'm going to clean this with the CLP, pretty much the same way you've seen us do it before, and put it back together, and I think we'll be good to go. And like I said, I'm not going to clean the action parts because they should not need it yet.